Hi everyone, good afternoon and welcome to the second presentation today for the Water Conservation Facebook Live series. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Emily Yarsinski. I'm a water conservation specialist with Valley Water. I will be introducing the event today and monitoring incoming questions and answers. Today's presentation is How to Lose Your Lawn with Valley Water's Landscape Rebate Program, hosted by Water Conservation Specialist 3 and Manager of the Landscape Rebate Program, Ashley Shannon. We are recording this presentation, so if you missed anything, you may watch it again at another time. And those who could not join us today can watch it after it's been posted on our website. So the video will be posted soon, and it's located on Saving Water videos page on our website. Please note, if we don't get to your question today, we will have an email address supplied, so please send us your questions if we missed any, or any additional questions that you think of after the presentation. So here is our dial-in number if you do need to call in, and please be sure to enter our webinar ID number displayed in the red box on the right to ask a question on our Zoom webinar. Again, my name's Emily. I'll be monitoring today, so you can ask me any questions as we go along. We'll be focusing on landscape conservation rebate questions today. So if you do have any other questions, you may go to Access Valley Water to ask any other questions that you may have in mind. Be sure to click that Q&A box at the bottom of the screen here, and you can type in your question, and I'll try my best to have all of your questions answered today. But again, if not, you may go to Access Valley Water. You can send us an email anytime. And with that, I'll let Ashley take it away. Oh, let me go over these videos that are these other presentations that we do have coming up. We have our September 15th that just passed. It was Top 10 Ways to Save Water at Home with Karen Coppett. It's an excellent presentation, and we do have this available on our website currently. So you can go to Saving Water Videos, which is on our website. And today is the How to Lose Your Lawn with Valley Water Landscape Rebate Program. The next two events we have coming up, October 22nd at 6 p.m., Reuse Gray Water and Rainwater in Your Yard with Justin Burks. And then the final and fourth presentation on November 18th at noon, another Lunch and Learn, Becoming a Leak Detective at Home with me, Emily Yarsinski. So keep an eye out for these registration details and other events coming up, and you can register on Eventbrite and on our website as well. So I'll let, and you can also look at all of the other videos that we do have available online. We've got a great Conservation as a California Way of Life series. You can watch these really amazing 1 to 2 minute short, quick videos. And on this webpage, we'll also have this video posted as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, and I'll let Ashley take it from here.
All right, thank you, Emily. All right, I'm excited to be here today. Thank you all for joining us and learning a little bit about our landscape rebate program, specifically our landscape conversion rebate. So for this presentation, I am going to do a quick overview of Valley Water, who we are and what we do. And then I'm going to dive right into our landscape conversion rebate, which is a part of our landscape rebate program. So I'm going to go over the overview of that program, really quickly let you know about a couple other programs that we have, one of which we'll have a presentation on the 22nd of October in depth, and then talk to you a little bit about the application process and the requirements for the lawn conversion rebate. So as Emily mentioned, we'll do questions and answers at the end, but I will be keeping an eye on the question box, and if something pops up that's really relevant to the slide that I'm on, I will try to fit it in. Otherwise, we'll try to get the questions at the end. So jump into it. All right, so Valley Water, formerly known as the Santa Clara Valley Water District, is a water wholesaler in Santa Clara County. We have about 13 water retailers, so each of you probably pays your water bill to a different water retailer within the county, not directly to Valley Water. We also have over 4,000 wells that we do manage in our county as well. we manage our entire watershed, and so we are responsible for supplying drinking water or safe, clean water. We are also responsible for flood control, so all things surrounding our creek management and flood, and then also maintaining a healthy creek system. And so water conservation, which is what I work in, is all wrapped into this. So water conservation helps out with keeping our creeks healthy, and with providing a reliable source of water. So water use in our county specifically is a little bit different than some parts of the state. We use water very heavily in our residential sector. So about 55% of the water that we use is in our residential sector. Now, in our county, through water conservation, we've actually been able to maintain about the same amount of water use total for the whole county as we've since 1990. And so even with an increase in population, we've been able to maintain a total amount of water use, similar use than quite a while back. And that's due to water conservation and learning how to use water more efficiently. And so there are still ways to improve. With the residential water use, you can see that about half the water that's used is outdoors. And so we're really looking, we're focusing a lot lately on water conservation in the outdoor sector because there is a huge potential to increase in efficiency. I like to say, and I've heard someone say this before, we live in Silicon Valley. We upgrade our phones as soon as something new comes out. We're all about new technology, but we have a lot of extremely outdated irrigation systems and technologies in our home related to water that people have just kind of gotten used to using. And so there really is a potential to make everything that we do more efficient, starting specifically with our outdoor water use, which is what I will focus on. So conservation is important. We all know that we need a reliable source of water, but there's a lot more that goes on with water conservation and its importance. Water use in our state is about 20% of the energy that we use in the entire state of California is related to water use. So water use is, if you conserve water, it has a direct correlation with conserving energy as well, which is important with climate change. It also increases our long-term reliability and reduces the amount of runoff that we have going into our creeks and streams. So it's very important for us to conserve water for a multitude of reasons. All right, I see a question popped up, but we'll discuss that one a little bit later. So right now, this is a map of our state from fairly recently, September 8th, and it kind of shows where we are in terms of drought. So our county is in that kind of pink, peachish area, and we're in D1, the moderate drought. And so we're keeping an eye on it. We do have a healthy groundwater supply right now, which is great. We were able to really manage that well. But if we continue to have dry years, and this is a dry winter, we will see those stages change to severe and beyond potentially. So water conservation is always on our mind. All right, so now I'm going to dive into the meat of the presentation, and this is how to use your lawn with Valley Water's Landscape Rebate Program. So very quickly, I'm going to kind of touch on the different rebates that we have available. Today's presentation isn't too long, so we don't have a ton of time to go into depth on all of these, but I'm going to touch on what is available, and we can provide more information about that on our website or in future presentations. So within our landscape rebate program, we have our landscape conversion, which is the topic of today's presentation. But we also have irrigation equipment upgrades, such as nozzles and bodies. We have a rebate for converting overhead sprinkler to an inline drip system, and rainwater capture. So all those are encompassed under the same rebate and same application process. Gray water, we have a rebate for gray water, laundry and landscape rebate. We're gonna have a great presentation by Justin Burks, who runs that program in October. So I recommend that you tune into that presentation. It aligns really well with the landscape rebate program too. So I do encourage anybody who's doing a landscape rebate program to look into the opportunity for also incorporating a gray water system into it. And we also offer services such as our WaterWise survey program. So if you think you have an inefficient irrigation system and you want someone to come out and take a look at it and note, where you might have some leaks or some inefficiencies, or you can make improvements, our WaterWise outdoor survey program is a great route to go. And then we also have a great little do-it-yourself kit where you can learn how to look at your own water usage inside your home and see if you have fixtures that are efficient or not. All right. Okay, so for the landscape conversion rebate, which is the conversion of lawns or pools to low water use landscape, and I'll show some examples of those in my next slide. We offer this rebate to everybody in the county. So this is residential, commercial, schools, multifamily. If there is a lawn or a pool, you're eligible to remove it. So for this rebate program, we offer $1 per square foot for the removal of lawn or pool and the replacement with low water use plants and permeable materials, things like that I will get into. We do have a couple of our water retailers, as I mentioned before. We have about 13 water retailers. Some of those have entered into an agreement with us to offer an additional $1 per square foot for their customers. So if you pay your water bill to the city of Palo Alto, Morgan Hill, Cupertino, San Jose Municipal Water, not to be confused with San Jose Water Company, City of Santa Clara or Milpitas, you are actually eligible for an additional $1 per square foot. So that's $2 per square foot for the first 1,000 square feet for residential, and the first 10,000 square feet for commercial. So it's a significant rebate. All right. To qualify for the landscape rebate program, as I mentioned, it's eligible to all sites. The applicant must be the site owner or an authorized representative, such as a property management company. So this means that if you're a tenant, the rebate can't be issued to you. You can help facilitate the process, and you can work with your with the landlord to do the process, but the rebate check has to be issued to the site owner. So that's something to consider. And to qualify, the existing pool or lawn must be in place at the time of application. So we do not retroactively rebate for any projects that were started prior to application and approval. So this kind of addresses, I think we had a question about a site that was ineligible because they started ahead of time. Unfortunately, if we're not able to bookmark funds for a project or to review it ahead of time and make sure that they're meeting all the requirements, the project would not be eligible for a rebate. So if you are interested in this rebate program, remember actually I'm gonna go back one more, to submit an application. Now, lawns can be in various stages of life. Since the drought, we've seen a lot of sites that have let their lawns die because they didn't want to use water on those, and we definitely recognize that at this point. So if you have a lush green lawn that's watered and maintained, it would be eligible for the rebate program. But if you have a pretty ugly lawn, like the one in the bottom corner, bottom left corner, that one still is eligible too, as long as everything is still in place. So the lawn has, started to die, but it's still there. Nothing has been dug up. No new plants have been put in. The project has not been started. So we would still consider this site eligible for a rebate if the lawn is dead. Let me just double check and make sure. Yeah. So yeah, but if for some reason you had already scraped this lawn out and removed it and it was bare dirt, it would not be eligible to participate in the rebate program. cameras for a second. Okay. So as I mentioned, we have an application process that that should be started before starting your project. So we moved to an online application a few years ago, and you can find that portal either by going to watersavings.org, which is the last link that I have on here, and navigating to our rebate programs, or directly to our online portal, which is the SCVWD.dropletportal.com. Once you're on the website, you are going to get started, which is the green button here to the right. I have the big red arrow pointing to it. And you're essentially going to create a profile and then enter in some preliminary information about your site. When you apply, you should be prepared with a few different documents when you start the application process. So in the very beginning, we are just collecting a bit of information about you, about your site address, and about what your existing landscape, or if you're applying for irrigation equipment, what those existing items are, because we want a bit of information to see if the site is eligible. So when you apply online, you'll need your name, your mailing address, your phone number. Those things are pretty easy. You'll let us know where your site is. All of these rebates are tied to the site address. Our caps are based on the site address. So you can do multiple phases until you reach our cap, but it's all tied to the particular site address. So we'll need that information. You should also have a copy of your current water bill on hand, a recent water bill. It's okay if it was a couple months old, that's fine. We're really looking at it to verify your address and your water account number. We're not looking at the water bill to look at your water usage or those sorts of things. We're really just confirming the water bill. Because we are a water wholesaler, we don't have direct access to your water bill, which is why we request a copy of it from you. We also need photos of your existing lawn or pool. So in this case, this person provided us a few different views. We want to be able to see the, get a good idea of the full area of lawn that's eligible. Even if you're just converting part of it, we want to see the full area. And this just kind of gives us a heads up if we need to call and have a conversation about whether it qualifies or not. And we can do that based on the initial photos that are submitted. If you have a pool, you can submit photos of the pool. Oftentimes we can actually measure the pools easily using Google Earth. And so we have a little image in the bottom corner of kind of what that view would be like. But the pool does need to be in place, and it still needs to have water in it to be eligible for a rebate program. And then just the estimated square footage, and this can be really rough estimate. So don't stress out if you don't know exactly how, it really just helps us kind of plan our inspection and allot enough time. So if it's a huge lot, we'll allot a little bit more time. If it's just standard, we know how long that we need to be out there. So once we receive this initial information, we'll schedule a pre-inspection, and we'll come out and we will measure your site. The next step after you have a pre-inspection, after we've confirmed the square footage that you're eligible for, is to submit the second part of the application. And I'm going to go through, not step-by-step how to submit the application, but just sort of what information is needed and required. So for the second step, we need to know, what you're doing. If you have a plan drawn out by a landscape designer, that is wonderful. You can submit that. If you have just a rough sketch, you can submit that as well. Or if you just want to write a description about what you're doing, like I'm going to remove half the lawn or all of the lawn, I'm going to put in a pathway, that's totally fine too. We understand that people, have, some people do it all themselves, which is totally fine. Some people pay a contractor. You can do that, the whole range. It's totally up to you. But a little bit of information about your project helps us identify anything that might potentially not qualify, and will assist us in issuing the notice to proceed. So once we've approved it, we will issue what's called our notice to proceed. It's an official email that you'll receive saying, thank you, you were approved, you can go ahead and start. Today is your start date. You have 90 days to complete your project, and so this day is your end date. And you're eligible for this many square feet of lawn. Once you've received that, then you can take the shovel and start digging things up. You're ready to go at that point. There are three, we have on our website, we list the full requirements, but I'm going to touch on, the three main requirements that everybody needs to meet. And that is our 50% plant coverage requirement, the requirement to cover all bare soil with some qualifying materials that I'll go over, and efficient irrigation. And so I'm going to dive into those specifics. And all the photos that I'm using in this PowerPoint are of projects that have completed our rebate program. So these are actual comments. All right. With a pool, if someone does convert a pool, we definitely, they have a question about how it would work. It's still based on the square footage of the surface area of the pool. Most pools are about 500 to 700 square feet, so it's not a huge rebate. We measure the surface area of the pool. You would need to probably get a permit. You'll have to check with your city on how to properly break down that pool so it's safe. But then it would be infilled. It would still need to have all these same requirements. So you would have to have plants in there. It would have to be permeable. You'd have to have mulch, things like that. So we're looking at the surface area of the pool. Otherwise, all the requirements are the same, whether it is for a pool or a lawn. So I'm going to dive into the 50% plant coverage requirement. I know that sometimes people feel that this is, might be contradictory. Why are we using plants? Why are you requiring plants? They're going to use extra water. Why are you requiring that for the rebate program? We require plants because, as I mentioned, we manage our watershed as a whole. And so we do want to make sure that everything that we're promoting with our rebate program also is beneficial to the other things that we do. So having plants in your landscape help reduce erosion. And so we don't get pollutants and dirt running off into our stormwater, into our creeks. They help cool the air, they increase biodiversity. There's a number of environmental benefits that outweigh the small amount of water that they're going to use, but it is far less than a traditional lawn. So we do require that when the conversion is complete, that there are enough plants that by the time they're mature, they're going to take up 50% of the area that was converted. So if you have 1,000 square foot lawn, you need to have enough plants that will cover 500 square feet of that area when those plants are big. We have a qualifying plant list, and all of the plants on that list are low and very low water using. You would choose plants from that plant list, and we will tell you how many square feet each of those plants take up. So on the right, you'll see a sample of a plant list that somebody submitted. You can see that they have 1,158 square feet of lawn to be removed. That means at minimum, they need 579 square feet of plants. Then they entered their plants into our database. They told us the name of it, how many they were using, and then we calculated how many square feet that would take up. So let's see. Yeah, so we have some things, on the plant list. Someone asked about a specific plant. Our plant list is really extensive. Most of the plants on there, if there is a particular, cultivar of that plant, meaning maybe it has a particular color or something like that, those usually qualify as well. So if you have specific questions about plants, we can take a look at it. Otherwise, you can take a look at the plant list, and it's pretty extensive. So this person submitted their plants. We took a look at it and said, yep, you're using enough plants in your proposed plant list. We're going to go ahead and issue your notice to proceed. It is okay to make changes to your plant list as you go through the process. It's very hard to plan, and then when you go out and buy them, something is gone. We're okay if you make changes, but you will need to submit a new plant list at the end. For resources for planning your garden, we have some great resources. southbaygreen.gardens.org. I definitely recommend bookmarking that site. It's got a bunch of great design templates, information about plants and soil, everything you would need to get started. Another great resource is calscape.org, all right, which has a lot of information about our California native plants. So, pardon me. My computer lagged for just 1 second. All right, here we go. So here's a couple examples of one of the design templates that you can find. These design templates actually have been reviewed and meet the requirements of our rebate program. If there's anything in them that doesn't, it's noted. But you can kind of get an idea of how different people accomplish this. So our plant list is really vast, and you can really put in whatever style you want to meet the requirements. So people can get really creative. So this is one site that chose to use mostly succulents. We have another site, that's planted pretty densely. They probably are well over the 50% plant coverage. That's okay too. Some plant a little bit less. This one on the right got creative in their parking strip. So a lot of people, think that parking strips just have to be lawn. They don't. It's actually a great opportunity to remove your lawn because they're really inefficient and very hard to irrigate. So just some examples of how people incorporated plants into their landscape. The next requirement is to cover all bare soil. So we want to make sure that we are protecting the soil. So once you remove the lawn, you don't want to leave that soil exposed because it could erode, you'll get a lot more weeds, and it actually, water will evaporate faster. So for one of the requirements of the program is that by the time it's done, we don't want to see any bare soil. So it needs to be covered with a few qualifying items. So mulch is the most standard. So in this photo down here, you'll see that the planting beds where the plants are in, it's covered with a wood chip mulch. That needs to be at least 2 inches thick. Gravel is okay to use. They use some gravel in their pathway, and then permeable hardscape. This site converted their driveway at the same time. That's not part of the rebate, but this pathway that they put in is with permeable pavers, meaning that water is able to go through the cracks of the pavers and percolate back into our groundwater supply. So this site used a variety of different materials, all of which qualify for our rebate program. Things that don't qualify are anything that won't let water seep through. So concrete, asphalt, if you put in a building, something like that in the area, or a shed that, it doesn't allow water to percolate through it, it wouldn't qualify. And we also don't rebate for artificial turf. We have some concerns about its effects on the environment, and so we don't allow it for the rebate. Here's some other examples of ways that people were creative with materials to cover the area. So this one on the left used decomposed granite, which is pretty common in these types of gardens, lined with some cobble, and then they mulched around the planting areas. This one on the right used flagstone set on gravel or sand. If you are using any material like brick or flagstone or things like that, it's okay to use as long as it's not mortared in place or sealed. So we want water to be able to flow through it. The last main requirement is efficient irrigation. So part of the reasons that lawns are such big water guzzlers is a result of the irrigation system that they use. So sprinklers are throwing water in the air, and we're hoping that it lands where it's supposed to, and that it's, the plants are able to use it. But it's a really inefficient system. So when you're converting your lawn, you want to first get rid of those inefficient sprinklers. So you can either cap the sprinklers, which is this image in the bottom. There's sprinkler caps where you can remove the whole sprinkler itself and cap at the bottom, or just a simple cap that will go at the top. But either way, when the project is done, we want to see that those sprinklers are not usable anymore. Some customers ask if they can just turn it off at the valve and leave the sprinklers in. We don't allow that because we really don't want it to be easy to turn them back on. So if you sold your house and someone's like, I'm just going to start using the sprinklers again, we don't really want it to be easily reverted back to that. So we do ask that the sprinklers are either removed or capped. You can also use conversion kits on the sprinklers to convert them to a drip irrigation system. We do allow drip irrigation systems in the converted lawn area. So this is a form of, it's a low flow irrigation that puts water out, just at the base of the, on the ground, near the base of the plant. You're not throwing any water in the air. You can use different forms of drip irrigation. So this might be the kind where you're plugging in little emitters, or it might be this tubing, which is an inline drip tubing that has emitters built into it. But if you are using a drip irrigation system, you should be sure to upgrade your existing irrigation system somehow to include pressure regulation and a filter. So that might be in a drip conversion kit, or it might be in new valves like this. But just be sure that you're not just switching directly to your sprinkler valves and not making any other changes, because you will run into problems down the road. You'll get clogs. Emitters are very small, and so you don't want those to get clogged up, and they really require a specific level of pressure, and so you want that pressure regulation on it. You can also hand water. So if you are committed to hand watering and you enjoy that, and maybe you have a smaller landscape, you definitely don't need to spend the money on a new fancy irrigation system. You can just hand water your plants, which is totally okay as long as your sprinklers are capped. Let's see. So those are, the main requirements of the program. So low water using plants and enough to cover 50% of the area. Recovering the soil with qualifying permeable items such as mulch or gravel, anything that allows water that goes through. And we're using some sort of efficient irrigation system. So no more sprinklers, if you can remember, nothing but that, no more sprinklers. So at the completion of your project, you are going to submit some photos of your completed project, and we'll take a look at them and decide whether we need to come out on site and do a post-inspection, or whether we can see based on the photos that you met all of the requirements. We will also ask that you provide us with an updated plant list. So you might have made some changes, things weren't available, you changed your mind partway through. That's totally fine, but at the end, we still need to make sure that that minimum requirement for the 50% plant coverage is met. And then we'll also subtract any areas that may not qualify. So if you have some non-qualifying items within your landscape, they don't necessarily disqualify your whole project, but that area specifically won't be in the rebate. So with this photo on top, you'll see that they decided that they wanted to keep part of their lawn. They used it, their kids ran around on this area. It was smaller, they liked the look of it. That's totally fine. But what we would do at the end, because in the beginning we would have measured the whole lawn area, what we would do at the end is come in and measure the remaining lawn and just subtract it from their rebate. So if they had 500 square feet of lawn to begin with, and they ended up keeping 300 square feet of it, they would be eligible for a rebate for the conversion of 700 square feet. So any remaining lawn is subtracted from the total rebate. We also have a lot of sites, and I'm a big vegetable gardener and I'm a big proponent of it. We have a lot of sites who want to incorporate raised vegetable beds or edible beds into the landscape. This is a great thing to do, but they're not eligible for the square foot rebate. And this is because vegetable gardens tend to be high water users. And so we can't offer a rebate for substituting one high water user for something else that's also high water using, although it is in my opinion, a better use of the water. It's not eligible for a rebate. But those vegetable beds really end up being a pretty small square footage. So I do usually encourage people who really are maybe wanting to do that. Each of the vegetable beds might be 25 square feet or something. So it's a small area, and I recommend if it's worth it to you to have vegetable gardens in it, by all means go for it. But if the whole lawn was converted to a vegetable garden, which is what I did to my lawn years ago, it would not be eligible for a rebate. So for that one. We'd also subtract out any impermeable surfaces. So if you decided to put in a concrete pathway through the garden, or you ended up using pavers, but you used a sealant on them, or a type of polymeric sand that really sealed in between them and they were no longer permeable, those areas would be subtracted from the rebate as well. So once the rebate is complete and we've either approved it through photos or we have gone out in person, we will then approve the final rebate, and your rebate check is mailed usually 4 to 6 weeks from your final post-inspection date. And so, I know that was a lot of information all at once, but that's a general overview of our landscape rebate program. If you are doing other portions of the rebate, which you can as well at the same time, like maybe you're putting in a rain garden, or you're putting in a rain barrel, or a weather-based irrigation controller, you would apply for those at the same time during the same process, or you could do them separately at a later date. Either way is fine, as long as you submit an application for those. So now, if you'd like, we can open it up to questions. I know a few of you had questions throughout, and I believe I was able to answer those. But we've got about 8 minutes or so for more questions if anybody wants to go more in depth on anything that I spoke about. You can also, for more information about the rebate programs, go to watersavings.org. Our online application has in-depth requirements. So I definitely recommend if you are participating in the program that you look at those requirements. Somebody asked about applying in Gilroy. Yes, the entire county of Santa Clara. So, we're Los Altos Hills all the way down to Gilroy and everything in between. As long as you're within the physical boundaries of the county of Santa Clara, you would be eligible for the rebate.
Ashley, we did get a question from Facebook Live. A question about why is my water usage 35, but my bill is 150?
So I would encourage you to direct that question to your water retailer. So as I mentioned, we're a water wholesaler, and so we don't bill customers, and so without knowing your water rates, etc., we wouldn't be able to answer that question. But your water retailer, who you pay your water bill to, they are the best people to answer any of your water bill specific questions. And you'll be able to find on your water bill, there should be a contact number on there. So I'd recommend giving them a call, and they can answer all of your questions. Someone just asked me what my favorite plant in the garden is. That's a big one, but I tend to like plants that have multiple functions. So I am a big fan of using California native plants. They are, not only are many of them very beautiful, but they really support our local insects and birds and everything. And so I like plants that have kind of a multi-function. So our California buckwheat, there's a bunch of different varieties of that. They are incredible supporters of insect pollinators, but they're also really pretty and they bloom for a long time. So that one's probably high on my list. Yeah, we have a really extensive plant list, but I do really enjoy seeing everybody's unique styles as it comes through.
Thanks so much, Ashley. Does anyone have any other questions?
And we do have this hotline here, and actually right now, while we are sheltering in place, you can reach our hotline and leave a voicemail. We don't have a live person answering it, but we will call back. But I do recommend, if you have specific questions about the rebate program, especially really site-specific questions, to email us at this conservation@valleywater.org address, and we can go into depth and answer your questions about the rebate program. And you can send us photos and ask for resources and all of those things.
We do have a question in the chat box. How do I choose a landscape designer?
All right. So we have, there's a few different routes that you can go for choosing a landscape designer. We have a list on our website on watersavings.org. We have a landscaping page that has a bunch of different resources on it, but one of them is finding a professional. And so we have a list of landscape professionals who have had experience with with guiding their customers through our rebate program. So it's not a recommended list or preferred list, but it's just a list of landscapers who have had 3 or more of their customers go through our program. So at least you know that they're familiar with how to do this, and generally they're, you know, maybe more in line with sustainable landscaping and low water use landscape. So I'd say that can help you narrow it, but otherwise I would say, you know, go online and look at their portfolios. Much of it's going to have to do with your personal aesthetics, and you'll need to find a landscaper who kind of lines up with that. So most of them on their website have their portfolios. Just, you know, scroll through and see if it's something that grabs your eye, and if it's not quite a style that you're into, then, you know, take a look at a different designer and see, you know, kind of what lines up through there. There's also the APLD, let's see, Association of Professional Landscape Designers. Is a professional organization, and you can look up on their site and, you know, type in your address and try to find who's on their list that's in your area. So that's another resource. Okay. These are great questions, fun questions. So. Someone asked about sheet mulching. Yeah, I do recommend sheet mulching. So sheet mulching, and I didn't get into how to remove your lawn, and there are varying degrees of sustainability levels. Sheet mulching is probably the highest when we come to, when we're looking at the level of is this sustainable. So if you're going to sheet mulch, it's a way to leave old lawn in place so you're not taking it to the dump. It also keeps your topsoil in place where most of your nutrients and biological activity is, and it allows that lawn to decompose into the landscape. So I do recommend sheet mulching. It gets a little bit tricky with the rebate program, because ideally if you're going to sheet mulch, you might want to put it on and leave it for 6 months or a year or something. That doesn't totally line up with our timeline, but there are ways that you can do it. So I do recommend contacting us if you do want to do sheet mulching, but yes, I highly recommend it. And landscape fabric, we had another question about using landscape fabric. Landscape fabric is okay, rebate-wise, to use under the mulch, as long as it's not a solid plastic, so water still has to be able to percolate through it. Personally, I do not recommend landscape fabric. It has a way of, it does block weeds in the beginning, but eventually you get buildup from mulch and dust and stuff blowing in, and so weeds will start to root on top of it, and then they're really hard. It's almost like they're Velcro to it. It starts to get exposed, and it kind of inhibits that biological activity in the top layer of soil, and so you don't really get your mulch breaking down into your soil and your worms and all that activity at the top, because it kind of it shuts it off a little bit. So yeah, you know, we do allow it. I think that if I was going to use landscape fabric in a landscape, I would use it underneath gravel. And that way, it's an easy way to, if you just change your mind, you don't want the gravel anymore, it is a cleaner way to remove the gravel. Otherwise, it kind of mixes into your dirt. But generally, I would recommend avoiding it, but it is available. And then follow up with that. So how do you prevent weeds? Yeah, heavy mulching, sheet mulching will help with weed suppression. And that's, you know, layering cardboard, or you can roll out these sheets of recycled thicker cardboard type paper to help reduce weeds. Heavy mulch, yeah, if you want to do, you know, 3-4 inches of mulch on there, it'll help suppress the weed seeds that are in there. If weeds do sprout, they're easier to pull out, they're kind of a weaker root system. It's important to remember that nothing is weed-free. So you're never going to have a weed-free garden, whether you use fabric or sheet mulching or anything, but it's just a matter of maintaining it. So if you do have, if they, you know, maintain them as they come up. So yeah, and someone talked about using Roundup to kill the weeds. That is a route, not one that I would necessarily recommend, because you know, it's a chemical, not really great for people or our waterways and for climate change, but it is a method. But it's just one that I would probably reserve for as a last resort. So if you have really noxious weeds that you have tried to pull out, and you know, you've cut them down and there's still sprouting back up, maybe something like crabgrass, or if you have a tree of heaven that keeps sprouting up, maybe that's a last resort, but not necessarily something I would recommend as a first resort. So these are great questions, but I think we're right around 12:45, so I'll pass it back over to Emily, but thank you all for listening.
Yes, thank you all so much for joining us today. If you do have any further questions, you see the email address there on our thank you page here. You can go to conservation@valleywater.org and send us any other questions you have. Also, go to our website, watersavings.org, for additional questions outside of the Landscape Rebate Program or our conservation unit. Go to Access Valley Water and ask a question there, and we can help you out. So thank you again so much for attending our Facebook Live event today with Ashley Shannon. She did excellent, and we hope you had a great time. And please join us at the next Facebook Live series, October 22nd, with Justin Burks on reusing gray water and rainwater in your landscape. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you all.